Excellent. I see the people starting to welcome and starting to introduce themselves. So I want to start with welcoming. Oh, first off, I will just welcome everyone to the Great Parenting Show. I know some of you are brand new because we have people signing up constantly, and some of you have been here from the beginning, and many of you are listening to the replay. Welcome to everyone. I really want to acknowledge you for being the change we all want to see in the world. It's critical that you take the time, because even though once upon a time we didn't have to know so much about parenting to do a good job, those days are long gone, which we all instinctively know as parents. So I'm Jacqueline Green, by the way, if you're brand new. I'm the host and creator of the Great Parenting Show. This is our 6th year, which is fabulous. And I created this show because of knowing that even though I was already had been a parenting educator for a decade or so at that point, I knew that there's so many great experts and so many important topics that I wanted to see covered. And so I am very excited about our expert today, Amy Bryant. I'll introduce her in just a moment. I do want to emphasize as well that if you've got questions or comments, please put them in. And we've got questions already coming in. That's great, because Amy is going to stay for a bonus Q&A. And that bonus Q&A is available to everyone who makes it live. Even if you can't make it the whole time, you'll be sent a copy of that replay. And you also, if you have purchased the GPS Expert Resource Center, which I highly recommend, the repetition of being able to listen to things over and over and over again, really it's what we need for change. Great information is the place to start, but you need it to sink in. And so we have actually just for a few more days the low introductory price, because we're just about halfway through the season, so we're taking that down at the end of the weekend. So I want you to encourage you. That's actually greatparentingshow.com/TY will get you that information for purchasing the GPS Expert Resource Center. And everyone will get the free replay, and the people who purchase the Expert Resource Center or on live, you will get the bonus Q&A as well. And that in itself is worth well over the $77 that the GPS Expert Resource Center will cost you. So just to then dive into our topic today, which is provocative, is why spanking is harmful and how to intervene in public and advocate for peaceful parenting in a loving way. I love seeing how many different questions and comments are already coming in, because this is such a critical topic, and sometimes it's easy to assume that we've evolved to a point where it's not necessary, but we really, really need to talk about this. Amy Bryant, who is our guest speaker, is a licensed professional counselor, an educator, and a child advocate, and she is a therapist in Atlanta, Georgia. She specializes in working with children, adolescents, and families facing typical and acute challenges at home, at school, and in the community. She also writes for Parenting Beyond Punishment and Play at Home Mom blogs, where she advocates for children's rights, parent-child relationship, and the power of connection through play. She lives and plays with her daughter and her partner and her dog in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Amy, to the Great Parenting Show.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for having me. I'm excited to be back and joining you and all these people that you're having coming to speak. It's just wonderful. And your 6th year in a row, that's pretty amazing.
Yes, well, it's fun and just so gratifying seeing the shifts that people make over time. So let's dive in. I want to really focus in right off the bat on the whole spanking issue. How did you become an expert in helping people stop spanking?
Well, an expert, I don't typically call myself an expert,
Okay.
but it is a passion of mine, and it is something I like to educate people on. I think in the United States, over 85% of people still spank their children. I think the majority of people I know were spanked as children. And there are a lot of negative consequences of spanking that we see, unfortunately, every day. So it's a passion of mine. I want to educate people on the detriments and also on what they can do instead.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, because the research I think is really eye-opening.
It is.
And fascinating, because it's not even an area of controversy, that the research is quite conclusive. So what are some of the effects that that have been documented about spanking?
Okay, well, there's a lot, and the research has been going on for 50 years, and it's long-term research, and it's, you know, the short-term effects and the long-term effects. It's really astounding, really, that we have all these resources to help us. So one of the things is that spanking is consistently linked to aggressive behavior, to defiance, and to other similar behavior problems. It's linked to obesity, depression, anxiety, an increased risk for mental illness, both in adolescence and in adulthood, to lower IQs, to a dependence on alcohol and drug use later in life. Children who are spanked are at a greater likelihood to be in domestic violence relationships in adulthood. They're also at an increased risk to be physically abused as children. And then, of course, it has a negative impact on the child-parent attachment. And research shows us how vitally important that attachment is.
Yes.
So heart disease, I mean, there's all these physical ailments that we're put at risk for as well, which I think, you know, when you really do the research and you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, we've got to stop this. But then in addition to the research also shows that spanking is actually ineffective. In the short term, you might get some compliance, right? Like if you spank your child for hitting the dog, they might not hit the dog while you're there.
Right.
But they're not learning.
My cat's here today.
Hi, cat.
The door.
That's lovely. I love that. You know, but what they're not getting is sort of this internal locus of control and this internal moral guide. Like, we're not taking the time to say, well, why shouldn't I hit the dog or the cat? You know, and instead they're saying, oh, mom's not here, I can hit the dog. But we want to help them work through. They need the skills to know how their behaviors affect others and what their behaviors are going to mean for them in the long run. And if we short circuit that learning process with spanking, we're just really short circuiting so much for them, in addition to putting them at risk for all these other things.
Ironically enough, when we're hitting our children, that actually leads to increased aggression in them too, right? So not only are they not internalizing their values, which is what we so want, so that they do it when they're not around us, but we're also actually increasing their need to not, whatever, but
right. Well, we're meeting aggression with aggression, so they're learning, if I don't like something, I can just hit someone and get them to do things my way. And so we're modeling this as sort of an answer to things we don't like. It's okay. What's the cat's name?
It's quirky, but I'm actually going to put her out.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'm back.
Great. You know, it's about modeling, right? So we're modeling aggression and we're modeling violence as a means to get what we want in a relationship. And that's really why it puts them at risk for being in domestic violence situations when they're older.
Oh, it's just terrifying. And I know, you know, we'll talk about this in a minute, although it's not the focus of this interview, although we will talk some about getting our children to listen. But really we have, and I know you teach on this too, it's what we've been building on this whole season is how to get your kids to listen and working on the connection, which you're talking about, like playing and building the connection that way. So I want to point everyone to listen to the other interviews. That's the main point of this interview is going to be to highlight the spanking. I would like to talk about the impulses, you know, as parents, where do those impulses come from, and how we can work more with our impulses. But the actual brass tacks of how to get your child to listen, we're going to leave to more of the other interviews. So just, I want that to be clear to everyone. And I see that because I think this spanking, so let's talk about why parents spank, because it's so common, it's so pervasive. I really felt we needed to focus on this and really help parents see, because the key to self-control is mixed feelings, right? And if we are clear in our heads of what we're really doing when we spank our children, then that's going to help fuel our desire to get the training, get the tips we need so that we connect and get our kids to listen to us in a peaceful way.
Yes, right. I mean, the reasons why parents spank is often so complicated. You know,
Yes.
one of the first things I think that happens is we get dysregulated, either because we're afraid, like, oh my gosh, what if my child hits the dog all the time or really hurts the dog? Or, you
Mhm.
know, what if then my child hits other people? Is my child always going to be hitting? Are they going to grow up to be a hitter? You know,
Yeah.
like this fear that we all experience as parents takes over. And without skills, then you're like, oh my gosh, I have to stop it right now. I
Yeah.
have to stop it now. And the only thing I know to do is to hit.
Yeah.
So, what do we do? How do we help parents learn to become self regulated so that they can access their higher thinking and do something different?
Yes. You have posted a particular article. I wanted to say a quote from, because it was an article about, parents getting angry and about how when we get angry, we're coming from a place of feeling bad about ourselves,
Yeah.
and that then in order to restore our sense of self-worth, we lash out at our children. Do you want how about speak a little bit more about that just before I say this other quote?
Sure. I think one of the best things we can do for ourselves as parents is to have compassion for ourselves,
Yeah.
to really recognize what a struggle it is. We love these people so much, they're in our lives. We want so much for them, and we judge ourselves for our mistakes. And oh, I make mistake every day. I think every parent makes a mistake every day. And if we focus on that, we are going to be dysregulated and angry all the time. But if we
Yes.
can have compassion for how hard it is, then that compassion is going to spill out to our children. And instead of taking out our frustrations on them, we're going to have extra compassion to offer them when they're having a hard time. And they're having a hard time. That's why they're getting spanked. Our children are having a hard time. And if we can recognize it as that instead of, they're giving me such a hard time, but oh my
Yeah.
gosh, they're having such a hard time, that compassion we offer for ourselves is going to just bleed out into compassion for our children too.
Mhm. I want to say that again. So you're saying it's because it's just so true and so important. Instead of seeing our children as giving us a hard time, seeing it as having, that they are having a hard time.
They
And
are.
that is such an anger reducer,
Yeah.
because we naturally, when we see our children, and Gordon Neufeld talks about this, when we see our
Yeah.
children correctly, our behavior follows.
Yeah.
And so if we see that our children are struggling, then we want to help them. I love that, Amy.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's the same true for us. If we can see ourselves as having a hard time,
Yes.
that's key. Because if we just think that we are doing terrible, that we're just giving everyone a hard time, we can't soften to ourselves.
Yeah.
And it takes up a lot of energy that we could otherwise be spending having more joyful encounters with our children.
Excellent. Um, I like this quote, and it furthers what we were talking about. So this is from the article that you posted on anger. Children experience anger for the same reasons, mostly to defend the sense of self from the pain of temporary diminishment. So something happens, and I love it because we walk into the house, something happens, and we feel like a bad parent, or we feel guilty, or like you said, we worry that hitting the dog's going to happen forever and real harm's going to happen. And then anger kicks in, and anger drives us to want to do something. But the other thing that I took from this that I wanted to bring up is it says, is anyone ever stupid enough to turn off a lamp with a rock? When anybody is angry, everybody is that stupid. So the
Yeah.
problem is we get this rush of emotion,
Yes.
and it takes us from our prefrontal cortex down into our base, primitive brain,
Right.
and we are stupid enough to take a rock to turn off the lamp.
We're desperate, right? We're desperate. But
Yeah.
that's one thing I like about your show, the GPS, like those emotions, they are our GPS system.
Absolutely.
They are our GPS system that says, I'm having a hard time, something's going on, and I've got to do something.
Yeah.
And what we have to do is then learn how to become regulated so that we can do something that's appropriate, do
Yeah.
something that's beneficial for everybody.
Okay, so let's talk about how do you recommend parents become regulated,
Okay.
especially if they start feeling the rush of anger.
Yes. Okay, so these regulation skills, these self-regulation skills, are the same skills that you're going to use and when you see someone being aggressive with their child in public, whether they're hitting their child or they're yelling or they're grabbing. It's the same regulation skills, the skills you need to, that we all need, that I still practice, so that we can get to a place where we can be helpful. And I'm going to refer to my notes more than often right now because I have had a migraine for 3 days. So
Oh, shoot,
I know
Amy.
it's better today. I'm just foggy. So bear with me.
Okay.
So one of the things we can do to manage our arousal levels is to walk, because movement actually creates a calming response. So with your child, before you do anything, you might just want to get up, get a glass and fill it with water and have a drink of water, because that movement and that doing something different is going to help calm you down. The next thing you want to do is you want to take a breath and you want to exhale for longer than you inhaled. So like right now I'm holding my breath, so instead I'm going to go.
How about everyone take a deep breath too?
Do
Because
it.
there's not a parent out there who's too calm, right?
There's not a parent out there that's too calm. Yes. And that slow exhale, it actually sends a signal to our brain telling us that we're safe. Because we have a lot of fear as parents, and some of it is from our own childhood stuff that we haven't worked through. Maybe we never really worked through it all. But we need to send our brains a message that we're safe, that even though this glass broke, even though there's a broken glass on my floor, I, as the parent, am not about to get spanked for it, even though my body might think it's about to get spanked for it because of something I may have experienced as a child. So when we take the time to take that long exhale, we're telling our brain that we're safe. And that's an important thing to do. We also want to feel the ground beneath our feet. So when we're talking to our children, when we're walking, feel the ground beneath your feet, because it grounds you into your body and it helps you stay calm. So once you move into that calm place, or if you're already there and you want to make sure you stay there, sometimes I will move my feet just a little bit or wiggle my toes just a little bit so I can continue to feel my feet on the ground. And again, these are all calm ways to get calm in your body. And then finding compassion. Again, you want to start with yourself. Like, I am really having a hard time. I feel it in my chest, or I feel it in my stomach, or for me, my ears sort of feel clogged, or I'll get tunnel vision. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, look at me. Poor me. I'm having a really hard time with this for whatever reason. I'm stressed out. I haven't had enough sleep. I've had a migraine for 3 days or whatever. And then look at your child and remember, like you had emphasized earlier, my child is really having a hard time. Because as soon as we're able to move into that compassion, it's such an amazing guide, compassion, because it gets us de-escalated and calm, and then it helps us move closer to our children so they can begin to co-regulate with us. Because in order for our kids to do better, they have to calm down, and they need to do that right along with us. They can't do it until we're regulated.
Yeah, because the really challenging thing, and part of the reason things get so wild when we don't know to do this, is our child actually, part of them having a hard time and needing our help is they need us to help them regulate. They don't.
They do.
So when we tell kids to do things like, quit crying and stuff like that, well, eventually kids will find ways of dealing with that, but that can be by drugs and cutting and all, like crazy ways as they get older, because those emotions may go underground, but if our kids don't actually know how to regulate them, then they're dependent on so many forces. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, these skills, they're so transferable. They're transferable for our relationships with our spouses, our partners, our colleagues, our children. But, young children, they're not just born being able to do these things. They learn it by us doing it. So we're modeling it, but we have these mirror neurons, and it's really so much more complicated. I'm not a neuroscientist, so if you're a neuroscientist, I'm botching this, but if you're a parent like me and you're not, it's okay. We have these things called mirror neurons, and when we're flipped, like we're Our kids are going to flip out too, but when we get into a place of regulation, our children can emote and they can be whatever they're being, and then their mirror neurons are going to be able to respond in the same way and get regulated. And it's that process of co-regulation, just like that, that helps those neurons and synapses and all those other big brain words develop so that they can get those skills. And it'll be so much easier for them than it probably was for us learning those if we didn't gain those skills as children. So.
And you're emphasizing that we regulate along with our child and can do it together.
Yeah.
What's neat though is we actually can learn these skills right alongside our
we can. Right? Absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing. Like, I absolutely learned these skills right along with my child, and she may be ahead of the game from me. Like, she might just be like, Mom, you're pretty upset, you know? And then I'm like, it kind of, you know, like breaks you out of that, like, whoa, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Absolutely. We are not hopeless. We can totally learn this in the moment right beside our children. And I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that because I think it's really easy. And now I actually want to dive back into some spanking stuff because of the occasional spankings and those type of effects and things like that. But I know it's really easy. Even, for example, the parent who's listening and has been spanking his or her child and now is saying, oh my goodness, like I've hooped my child. What can I do? That will do so much negative to everyone listening to your stress levels, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that. How do you recommend parents even deal with if they have been spanking? And just right before saying that, though, let's just talk about occasional spankings. How different is an occasional spanking than regular spankings?
I don't know statistically speaking, but what I do know is that when a child, the trust between a child and a parent is broken, it's difficult to repair. So if the child is always thinking, am I going to be hurt by this person I love and this person I respect and this person I depend on? It really, no matter if you do it once a month or once a day, it's still going to really interfere with the parent-child relationship. And it's still going to have negative effects on your child as you grow up. And it really takes so much joy out of the parenting too, because when you get to that place where you're so angry and so fearful, right? It's so hard. It feels so bad. And then you're also dealing with the guilt. There's just so much more. You can bring so much more enjoyment into your parenting if you just sort of make that commitment and you say, you know what, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the skills I need to learn how to work with my child and learn how to develop skills right along with them. You know, I'm going to learn this with my child. I'm going to learn how to regulate. I'm going to learn how to speak and use my words instead of my hands. And it really does make a difference. But you can repair it. If you're a parent and you've been spanking, all hope is not lost.
No, exactly.
It's not. You can make the decision to say, I'm going to reconnect with my kid. I'm going to understand that I have some reparations to make, and I'm going to do what it takes. But you can move in and you can make reparations. And this is a beautiful modeling. Like, you know what? I made a mistake, and I've done this, and I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm responsible. And you can help me by reminding me, or by, y'all will have to work together to figure out what kind of reminders they might have. Maybe you make signs, but hope's not lost. So
I really want to touch on that because it's not lost that if we were raised, I was spanked and that was a big deal, but I learned how to heal as an adult from all sorts of things, and we are built to be able to heal and move on. And that parent-child relationship is such a powerful, it's meant to be a really powerful healing ground. So I really like that you talked about that the reparations absolutely can be made. So please, nobody listen, worry about that, and be careful, because why did we spank? If we did, it's partly because you do want the best for your children.
Yes.
Fear does come up in all these different emotions. So acknowledge the fact that you didn't have the best tools. Right?
Yeah, continue to be kind to yourself, because if you start beating yourself up, it's going to make it that much harder to stop.
Yeah.
Um, and you're doing the best you can. We're all doing the best we can in any given moment.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of then your main advice for regulating, I'm not sure if you had anything else you want to add, but you talked about well, the breathing out. I'm trying to remember your order, but go ahead and
It can really be in any order. So,
okay.
I mean, in that moment when you're really angry with your child and you want to shout or threaten or spank, I think the best thing to do is get up and get a glass of water. You're
Okay.
moving yourself, you are preventing yourself from doing something in that moment, like breaking the light with a rock, like you had said, Jacqueline.
Okay.
You're preventing that, and you're getting up and you're taking ownership and responsibility, and you're saying, I'm the adult and I'm going to do this. And you look at your child and you say, I'm going to get some water and I will be right back. And you might have like giant eyes and you might be holding your breath. And when you're walking to get water, that slow exhale. And when you're walking to get water, feel the earth beneath your feet and get grounded.
Excellent. What if, because right away I hear, my head imagine the voices saying, what about my children though if they're hurting each other? Can I walk away? And what advice do you have in those type of situations to still start regulating while doing a
Yes.
situation?
Yes. So if they're hurting each other, of course, you have to stay physically present and hopefully emotionally and cognitively present as well. So again, you'll want to stay in your body. Maybe you can literally sit on the floor. It sort of depends on how old your children are and they're hurting each other. But if you can sit on the floor to get more grounded and stay in your body, it'll help calm you. You'll want to breathe out and exhale, and you want to let go of any idea that you're going to fix the situation in that moment. That
Right.
is not the moment to try to fix it. Your job in that moment is to get regulated and to stay regulated until your children are regulated. And that might take a lot of time, but you don't have to fix anything. You don't have to solve any problems. You just have to get regulated.
So again, I love that because that's emphasizing when you're down in that primitive brain and you're trying to fix anything, it
Oh,
is smashing a lamp with
it
a
is. It's
rock.
so re-triggering too, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and we also aren't talking about no limits. Like, for example, we're not saying it's okay for our kids
Right.
to be hitting. So it's ultimately, we're very much stopping spanking is not about permissive parenting. It's just about approaching it in a different way, right?
Right. Yes. It's not about not setting limits. It's about before we work on limits, we're getting regulated so that we can set appropriate limits and then enforce those limits in ways that are neurodevelopmentally informed.
Absolutely. And again, to emphasize the fact that your approach and we teach the same basic work, it ultimately gets children to internalize our values as opposed to only behave when we're around. And the difference of fear-based parenting versus love-based parenting, right? It's just
Yeah.
profound because as adults, we follow and emulate those who we love.
Mhm.
And that's totally what we want with our children.
It is. And the more we're connected and the less they feel afraid of us, the more they're going to want to emulate us.
Yeah, yeah. So I wanted to cover one more thing because I just noticed a question that had come in that is quite relevant. That um, if the parent Connie in this case is talking about it, when she walks away to regulate, her children, I don't know if this has happened or if she's just picturing this happen, but would happen because it certainly could be either. Her children could then just go on to do what they weren't supposed to do because she walked away. What do you want to say about that situation?
Taking a deep exhale.
Yeah.
Um, it, of course, this is a situation that could happen, right? So
Yeah.
you may just, it's kind of a judgment call. Like I might leave and get regulated so that I could better address it if it's not dangerous. Like, I don't know, they're playing with water on the floor and spilling it everywhere. I might still just walk away and get calm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that doesn't mean that you're being permissive. It means you're showing responsibility to get to a place where you can respond appropriately. So then you're going to go back and say, I see that y'all are getting water on my Persian rug or whatever, and water stays in the water table. Let's take this project outside where it belongs. You know, or whatever the example might be. Connie, if you want to give a specific example, and anybody, if you have a question, if you can provide a really specific example, it's easier for us to speak to it.
Yes. Yeah, great point.
And it'll be more clear for y'all also. Sometimes I just walk away and get calm because in the end it's already happened or it's in the process of happening, and allowing it to happen for 30 more seconds isn't really permissive.
That's so critical. When my kids were younger and I was first working on like them, their tendency to erupt and start hitting each other, I actually learned to quit running to help them because that got my physiology already going. And instead to breathe and walk towards them. So exactly what you're teaching, while saying to myself, this isn't urgent. So, you know, if one or two more hits got in the meantime, it's way better than me coming in and smashing the lamp with a rock, right? Because if as a parent I roar in and I start, like you said, the mirror neurons go because I start getting all excited, it's catastrophe. So love that name.
Yeah, it really just makes the situation so much more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And in games, so spanking, here's one more thing actually that I'm going to bring up. I've written down a couple things in case I wanted to bring them up. And it was another website that talks about how children feel when they're spanked. And of course, you know, poignant to hear their comments. But because I was thinking, so our children, if they're hitting each other, we hate that to happen. But if we come in and in our anger we spank them, then a higher degree of violence ends up happening. And so some of the kids were saying things like, a 5-year-old said, it's like someone banged you with a hammer. Another kid said, it hurts and it's painful inside. It's like breaking your bones. And another, the final one that I've written down is, I think it probably makes you feel ashamed inside. And then, of course, as parents, we're so worried about self-esteem because we then see children discouraged and not willing to try new things and all that. And so I really want to, and I love that you help parents make that link between really that the spanking, while you may be doing it because you know your kids need limits, it just doesn't work. Anything you want to add about even the child's perspective or anything like that?
I mean, children really do well when they can. They want to please us, they love us, they respect us, even if we don't feel. As adults, we have this idea of what it means to show respect, which often gets in the way of us seeing how much our children already respect us.
Right. Yes.
So if we can remember, like, our children do well when they can, and this is a lot of Ross Green's work, they do well when they can, and when they aren't doing well, it's because they either have an unmet need that we're not seeing, or they have a lagging skill and they need us to help them build those skills.
Yes.
And so, you know, your children love you. My daughter loves me. Jacqueline's children love her. That's already there. It's established. They really want to please us. And for as long as we're able to stay connected and to build connection, which was what we write a lot about on Play at Home Mom, is how do you play to connect with your children? And then on Parenting Beyond Punishment, what kinds of other things can you do to build connection with them? So we're not always focused on discipline. The focus is really, if we want our children to listen, it's on the relationship. That's how we get our children to listen. We focus on the relationship instead of the behaviors that make us crazy.
Yeah, and that's such a core misunderstanding. Unfortunately, I know a lot of it goes back to, you know, behavior science and kind of the dog training idea that we feel like we have to discipline and that we do have to discipline in the sense of to guide for sure, but it's a completely different thing. I'd like people to write this down. When you said that if our children misbehave, that it's either an unmet need or a lagging skill. I love that. It's so critical, and there's different ways of saying that, but it's just like critical. And even for us then, when we're misbehaving in the sense of spanking our children when we don't need to, it can be an unmet need or a lagging skill, but the lagging skill is our own self-regulation skill, right?
Yes. Yes, for parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as parents, absolutely, when we're not at our best as parents, it's because we have our own unmet needs. We have needs, and so often we cast them aside. We
Yeah.
don't take care of ourselves. We don't bring our needs into the equation when we're making decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we blow up. Well, why doesn't anybody ever think about me? You know, we have to bring that into the equation when we chat with our kids. Hey guys, the house needs to be picked up, and I see it's not going on. What's up with
Yeah.
this? You know, and then you come together, and I always say, like, I can't do it all, and I need there to be some semblance of order so that I can concentrate and get along.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to do XYZ. Anyway, it's about getting really clear on your child's needs and your own, because we all
Mm-hmm.
have them. And when we ignore our needs as parents, it's
Yeah.
really hard to parent peacefully.
Absolutely. It's fuel for
Mhm.
anger, isn't it?
It's
And
such fuel for anger and resentment, and it just
mhm.
is this vicious cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the whole issue of how to advocate for proactive parenting. Let's start with that, and
Okay,
then we can move from there.
that sounds good. So this is a really great topic for me. I love it. It is not easy. I don't think it's ever easy to see someone in public who's being rough with their child. It triggers me, and I want to run or I want to be angry, but then it's not helpful for anybody, because I know, again, you move into this place of compassion when you go, oh my gosh, this parent is really having a hard time, and we don't know why. We don't know, they got fired or someone died, or
Mhm.
maybe their child has been crying all day. Like, it is so hard when your child cries all day. We don't know what's going on. So I live in the South, and speaking is common. People talk about it, and I, when I go out in public, probably see it happen once a month. And sometimes my child is with me, and sometimes she's not. And so this is something that I have been working on for a long time. Like, how do I intervene in public in a way that feels right for me, that models what I want for my child, that is helpful to the parent who's struggling, and that is helpful to the child who is struggling. So,
Amy, I just want to make a comment that
yes.
right off, kudos to you, hats off to you. I'm not actually in a situation where the last time I can even think of a mom really explicitly growing up in front of me with a child was years and years and
Yeah.
years ago. So for a variety of reasons, that's not my reality. But I really applaud you because it takes skill and it also takes some courage to wade in big time.
It does. I'm not going to lie. It takes courage, because most of the times when I do it, I am scared and my heart is pounding, and I'm, trying to catch my breath and exhale.
And I'm sure you've had some angry responses, maybe even as you're
Oh,
learning to get better at this, for
for
sure.
sure. And over time, you get more regulated, you get better at those regulation skills. So let's talk
Yeah.
about it. So the first thing, like, I believe prevention is key. So any sort of small aggressive acts, I'm going to use that term, although it's all aggressive, yelling, sort of like, get over here, or anything like that, that can easily escalate into more physical aggression. So
Yeah.
I try not to ignore it, because if I can prevent it by just moving closer to that situation, can often de-escalate it, just your presence. So if you see yelling or threats, just simply moving your shopping cart over to that family can be helpful to de-escalate that situation. So that's sort of prevention. That's my go-to, because I'm like, oh my God, if I don't have to say something, that would be great. And while I'm there, I might like smile at the child or the parent.
Okay. So move your shopping cart over, smile at
Move
them.
closer.
Okay.
And that might de-escalate it. And then before you do it, you really want to pay attention to your body language, because a parent who's having a hard time is going to be much more sensitive to your facial expressions and your body language than anything that comes out of your mouth. So you'll want like a kind face, as kind as you can make it in that moment. A neutral face is often seen as aggressive or judgmental. So you don't want to just be like, right? You just kind of want to be like, however you can sort of get that face. I tend to look at the child because that usually softens my face. And then have kind of like an open body language. So you don't want to kind of like cross your arms. You want to kind of be open, kind face. And this is all sort of preparation in addition to those the regulation skills we talked about earlier that you're going to be practicing as you move close. You'll be practicing moving into that kind, open body posture. So then you want to express concern. So if the parent is hitting the child, you might just, my go-to response is, oh, please don't do that, and it sort of makes them look up, and you have this look of compassion and open. I put my hand on my heart, and that's natural to me. And I just want to say, y'all will want to find something that feels natural to you, physically, verbally.
Right.
You want it to feel like it's you. And I've been doing this for a while, so I just do what comes out when I'm in a place of compassion. Or you might say something like, oh, please let me help you. Whatever it really is for you. You want to express empathy, because really that parent's having a hard time. Yes. They need some empathy, and empathy is going to help them break out of that anger that they're in. You can say, I see you're in a hard place. Parenting is hard, and that's, totally disarming when it comes from this place of genuineness. And if you're not in a place of genuineness in the moment, you can get to a place of genuineness when you're practicing it. Because it's still deep in your heart, but it might be a little bit covered by just sort of the anxiety that you're feeling in that moment, and that's okay. You want to offer compassion, because compassion helps create safety for them. It helps them open their hearts. It helps them separate themselves from being stuck in anger. And it helps them feel cared for. So you might say, be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can. These are all phrases you could practice in different ways. Right. You can offer to help in the moment. Can I distract your child? Make faces at your child while you're reading that label, or while you're looking for the right size, or, offer just like, I can distract him and you can finish reading that label, or you can find the size you're looking for.
Love that, because it's so easy to show the parent judgment when they really need help.
They do. They need help. It's so hard. How many times have we been like, I just need another hand so that I can help, so I can meet my child's needs and cook dinner or read the label or find the right size. It's so hard. If you have time and space in your body, you can offer to listen. Sometimes parents in that moment will suddenly open up and unload, like from whatever it is that they want to share. And if you have the time, you can offer some reflective listening. Oh, your boss yelled at you today, or oh, you got a phone call, your grandmother died. Oh, I can see how hard that would be. And just sitting in that space for them, helping them unload. And then you want to offer them respect. So regardless of how they respond to you, you're going to try, your goal the whole time is to stay regulated, just like with our just like with our children.
Yes.
You really want to stay regulated with that parent. That is your goal. And if you could just stay present and regulated. So if they tell you to butt out, or to don't judge me, or to mind your own business, you can still offer them a kind smile, because that is still being not judgmental. That's still an attempt to help them become regulated and to not feel judged.
So in that case, though, you'd offer the smile as you're backing away, like you're respecting their space. But
you can, and you don't. Depending on how comfortable you are, I don't totally leave the space unless my daughter's with me and I feel threatened. But you could just back up and give them space and stay present. Maybe you look at the apples and they're looking at the nectarines or something, but you're still in that space with them. So you're still sort of being there to be accountable and to be kind of a calm, kind presence. And then if you can, you want to connect them to resources that offers encouragement and alternatives. So part of this process has been, we have so many people in our community at Parenting Beyond Punishment that want to be advocates who say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say, or I have 3 children and I can't be there for someone. And so we created what we call this NIP kit for helpers. It's neurodevelopmentally informed parenting. Anyway, it's a helper kit, and it's cards. It's like this, and it just says something kind on it. And so they can literally just walk up and be like, you know, I can see you're having a hard time. Be kind to yourself, and then hand them this card. You can make your own card, but it just says something kind, like parenting is hard. You're not alone. Be kind to yourself.
Oh, isn't that good? Because then if there's a play group in the area that you're part of, or some sort of support group or parenting classes locally or something, or, you know, for that matter, you could send them here, right? Like,
right. You could put the gpsshow.com on the back, or you could put Parenting Beyond Punishment, or list 4 or 5 resources on our back. We actually have this barcode that takes us to a website with free workshops.
Yeah.
And then we also have these removable stickers, so you can stick them places, and it's not graffiti because they peel off. So, so it's just like, what can you do in that moment to help that parent de-escalate and provide them with resources, right? Because they want to do better. They want to be connected. We all do. We all love our children, and we're doing the best we can. And if that parent can go, okay, so I was a little bit out of control, even though I understand why. What can I do differently? How can I learn to do something differently? I think that's key. Yeah.
Love that. And people are saying they're loving the card idea. I love because just all of this, you're de-escalating.
Yes.
And helping shift away from violence, because it's not about, well, as opposed to the judgment that's so common, because it escalates, right? And that
it does.
Perpetuates, because a dirty look to someone is a violent act.
It is, absolutely.
Right?
We can give parents dirty looks, and we can almost guarantee it's going to escalate the situation.
Yeah. Yes. How is that ironic? But yeah.
I know, right? It's not that we don't want to, but it's not helpful. It doesn't help us feel better about the people who are struggling.
Yeah.
You know, we have ownership over that too. I have to own my feelings over seeing these situations and getting to a place of compassion. But these skills are transferable to anything. If you see adults who are fighting, who might get physical, I mean, these are highly transferable skills. They are the epitome of peaceful conflict resolution. And that's what we need to move to. We see all these terrible events happening in our schools and you know, in our places of business and worship, and we need these skills. So,
well, nothing could be more of an example of being the change we want to see in the world. With that one act of de-escalation. Tell me some of the things that happened. Like, I'm curious what the end result is, because I can imagine that there are cases where people go on to get counseling, or they go on to connect with a group, or something, that it really could be a pivotal point.
Well, you know, I think it could. The cards are new, so I'm excited to have them to carry around with me. And I haven't, I think maybe because I'm looking for it, I'm not seeing it. I'm like, oh, I just want to give someone the card so that I can feel like they're getting resources. But in the past, my experiences have been that when I move in, they just de-escalate. Before I really knew what to do, like I really spent a lot of time reflecting, I would just do kind of like goofy things. Like I would suddenly be like, oh my gosh. And it was like kind of ridiculous things. But it changed the situation, and that was my goal. Or like one time I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And like it sort of startled the parent, and they stopped and they turned around, and the child sat down. They were about to get spanked for not sitting down. And, you know, so like, if all you can do is kind of like, I can't read this on this label. Could you read this for me?
Good
Like,
idea. Yeah.
any little thing you can do can be helpful to help that parent. And it is helping the parent because the parent is flooded with emotion.
Yes.
And you are changing their attention from their flood of emotion and anger that they're taking out on their child to something else. So if all you can do is distract, you have just been an advocate for the parent and the child.
Mm. What
Um,
about statements? Because you talked about having compassion in that.
mhm.
So statements like, "Wow, I sure have been there," or had feelings like
Yes.
that, or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. I think those statements are so powerful. Like, I'm a parent and I know how you feel. This is really hard, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And, wow, she's really having a hard time. It's so stressful, isn't it? You guys can be thinking about these yourselves and just jot them down and have things you practice saying. What would you say? What do you want to hear when you're having a hard time?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to hear like, is that the best you can do? Right? We want to be heard. We want someone to have compassion with us. So,
Where do people get the cards if they'd like to get
if you want to get them, you can go to my website, parentingbeyondpunishment.com
them?
/nipkit, NIPKIT. If you want to order one, you can do them there. We only made like 50, and I think we probably have about half left.
Okay.
I haven't checked it this week. I'm not sure.
I'm sure you'll order
Um,
more, and so people can.
we will try to, yes. We really, we have so many people who want to be advocates. It's so exciting. Every time I ship them out, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all these people that are going to go help parents and children. Because we really, as parents, don't have the support we need and the encouragement we need. It's hard.
Absolutely not. And I so can see how disarming it is to say statements like that when the parent is completely fried and
Yeah.
really needs somebody to reach out. So just extremely important work. Anything else you want to say about the whole idea of advocating for peaceful parenting in general?
Um, yes. Okay. So sometimes fears can get in the way, right? Sometimes we think they're going to say we're nosy or intrusive, or it's none of our business, or we shouldn't meddle. But or maybe we're embarrassed. I mean, maybe we're all of those things. We can have all of those things going on at the same time. But when we learn these safe interventions, they're safe for us and they're safe for the parent who's having a hard time, and they're safe for whatever children may be with us. We're really speaking up and creating safe, violent-free communities. And that's what we want to do. We want to show our children what it's like to stand up for someone who's afraid, and also to help someone who's having a hard time, and how you can really see both parties, both the parent and the child, as having a hard time and offering them both compassion. Um, if this were I remind myself, if this were an adult, no one would think twice about me stepping in and trying to de-escalate it. And I think if we want to change our society, we have to start seeing our children as deserving that same sense of safety and that same sense of, I can step in and help, and I can be supportive and encouraging for both people. And that's important work. I want my daughter to see me do those things. And I want other children to see it. I want that child who's afraid in that moment to know that it's not their fault.
It's too bad because they're not skills that are so widely used that people know how to do them, right? So when we are trying to teach our children stand-up comments to say to bullying and how to approach bullying, you're so right that by modeling it ourselves so that they see us standing up, that's extremely important.
Yeah. And there's so much of the modeling. We're going to model, what they're going to mostly see is us being calm. And they're going to say, oh, it's okay to be calm in this situation. Even though it's a little scary, I can still step in there and be okay and be safe.
Right.
And then they're going to also see us go, they're going to see so many wonderful things.
Yes. Yes. Okay, and so again, that you're recommending, because this is the same skill that we do with our children when they're upset, or with other people, or when we just are upset for any reason. That as you're walking over to the person, you are taking those deep breaths and really, yeah, and working on exhaling more than you're inhaling. And
Feeling the ground beneath your feet,
yeah,
getting
and
in
that's a
touch
great
with that
example
piece
of
of, yeah,
public, actually walking and feeling.
yes. When I am talking to a parent in public who's having a hard time, my toes are, they're just kind of like doing this,
Hmm.
just to remind myself that I'm there, that I'm safe,
Yeah.
that I'm connected.
And like any skill, you get better.
You do.
And I love how you started. And I want to emphasize that again because people have asked, I saw some other questions about, well, yeah, but how do I get my child to listen? And
Hmm.
being patient and reminding ourselves that we're learning, and
Yeah.
wherever you are now, you can't, if you want to change instantly, if you want to instantly become that parent who can de-escalate a situation in public, it's not realistic. It's really, and it's not kind, right, to ourselves to expect
Right. Right.
shifts too big, and not kind to our children to expect shifts too big. So just giving ourselves some time to become really this leader that you're describing, both in the family but also in a very public way.
Hmm.
Okay,
And
well, Amy,
we're gonna make mistakes.
yeah, yeah.
So you just get to start over, and it's okay.
And mistakes, like a baby learning to walk, mistakes are learning, right?
They are.
So, because without that information, mistakes really just give us additional information.
Mhm.
Okay, well, let's end the regular interview here. We'll still do a bonus Q&A after.
Okay.
I'm just going to wrap up with a couple quick things. And yeah, I had actually earlier written down a note, just, but I've already said most of it, is that, change is a process. So if you are someone who's been spanking your child, you may not even stop instantly today, right? And if you don't, be gentle on yourself,
Yeah.
because the irony is that so much parental spanking even happens from when, as Amy was talking about, we get in a bad place, so we hit our children. And so please, please be patient. And if you're patient and persist, you will get where you want to get to as a parent. And
Yeah.
there is a lot of support out there. Amy will support you. We'll support you here. I'll gladly support you through the Great Parenting Show. So a couple last things. Please send friends and family to thegreatparenting.show.com if you want them to have access to this interview this weekend. The replay's up Friday until Sunday. And greatparentingshow.com/TY for thank you. That is where you can get the GPS Expert Resource Center, and it is for just a couple more days on the regular, the introductory price. We do have a fantastic speaker again next week, and another critical topic. Karen Revich is coming on to talk about the optimistic child, how to safeguard your children against depression and build lifelong resilience. Fact of the matter is, though, stopping spanking is a critical first step there. And just before we get into questions, I want to, as always, thank everyone for listening and for taking the time. This is the crazy, busiest time of your life, and yet you found the time to listen to this interview. Phenomenal, and hats off to you for being the change we all want to see in the world. Amy, thank you so much for everything you do, because really, I love your quiet, gentle leadership. And I say quiet, not that you're not speaking, but you have a really calm, gentle way that you're approaching things. Very, very powerful, and definitely exciting to see this spreading.
Thank you.
Okay, so until next time, everyone, thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend with your children. Here's to great parenting, and bye for now.